Welcome to the Sales Lead Dog Podcast, hosted by CRM technology and sales process expert Christopher Smith, talking with sales leaders that have separated themselves from the rest of the pack. Listen to find out how the best of the best achieve success with their team and CRM technology. And remember, unless you are the lead dog, the view never changes.
Welcome to Sales Lead Dog. Today I have joining me Dan Gizzi. Dan, welcome to Sales Lead Dog.
Thanks, Chris. It's great to be here.
Dan is the Vice President of Sales for Magic EdTech. Dan, tell me about your role in Magic EdTech.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. My role at Magic is kind of an interesting one. We're very well situated in the education and tech space as a vendor preferred partner. And my role here is working with and managing the global accounts team. So working on more of the farming side of the house where we have established relationships. And for me, what's kind of interesting and unique is I'm actually at a point in my career where I'm now working for companies that I used to work with previously. So it's come full circle for me.
That's pretty wild. Thinking back over your career, and you've had a pretty long career in sales, what are the three things that have really gotten you where you are, that have really contributed to your success?
So I would say my top three things that would have gotten me here, authenticity, I would say was probably number one. Really being able to be yourself is important in sales. Number two is short-term memory. I say having a short-term memory for the things that don't go our way and still being able to wake up in the morning, put on the face and show up the next day is very important. And then for me, I would say number three is humility, because again, in sales, we're only as good as what we did yesterday, and today's a new day. And we have to always think about, what are we going to do again tomorrow?
Oh yeah, especially a short-term memory. I love that. You definitely have to have a short memory. How'd you get your start in sales? Was that your dream as a kid?
Pure accidental. My dream as a kid, and I still think there's this opportunity for me, is the first base for the Yankees. There's still some life in these knees. I just couldn't hit the curveball or fastball, or was not tall enough, unfortunately. So had to pivot very early on in life to decide where I was going to land. Actually, I started out in technology very early in where I was at the time, growing up in the 90s. I'm a product of the 80s, growing up in the 90s, it was when computers were really starting to find their way into our homes. The internet was very much in its infancy, and, really enjoyed taking the computers apart, putting them back together. And at that point, when I transitioned into college, I thought computer science was going to be for me, and ended up actually finishing my college degree, combining a management with portion of the degree with the computer science, one of the first MIS degrees before we were calling that a degree, and actually ended up a coder for a little bit and realized I was much better about talking about coding and talking about technology than I was building it. So I had to pivot very early on in my career. Ended up having an accidental career in publishing. Actually, a friend of mine that I had known they were hiring at their company in inside sales, and I was looking for my next opportunity. And started out in inside sales, was responsible for 100 plus accounts in the Midwest. And I'm a kid from New Jersey originally, that my knowledge of the Midwest was what you would see on TV. And I was working with schools in Chicagoland area, Wisconsin, Minnesota. So lots of names I had never heard of before, and thankfully took a liking to it and was able to progress throughout my career from inside sales into outside sales, actually moving to the Midwest for 10 years in Chicago, and then ultimately progressing to where I am today as a sales leader.
What was the toughest part about that early stage of your career doing sales?
Really the resiliency piece. So after 9/11 was really when I just had determined, okay, it's time to figure out what I want to do with my life. And, very early on, I'm in my mid-20s and packed up, moved to Chicago, thankfully with the company I was with at the time. I knew one person in Chicago and was really beyond just starting over in a new career, still very early on in sales, new city, new town, new everything, new culture. And, very quickly learned that The fish out of water syndrome is real. Imposter syndrome is real, particularly in sales as well. And, well, 20 plus years, I still feel like some days the imposter syndrome can be there. But, it's learning from the things that we didn't do well in one day and applying that knowledge forward is really what's helped me grow to be where I am at this point in my career.
Was there a mentor or someone back at that time that really helped you through that period?
I've had a couple in my career that I can look back on and say that absolutely I can still hear them, with their coaching and guidance. And I think, some of the best mentors I've ever had were some of the ones that were most critical of me, but making sure they were providing that guidance to get to the next step too. I've like to say the phrase to the folks around me, making sure you're comfortably uncomfortable. Never making sure you can fall into the patterns. And that was what some of my best mentors have always done for me. When they see that I was falling into, that early on pattern of, not necessarily trying something new or pivoting in a direction that may change the outcome, they would always make sure that they would, push the envelope a little bit, try to get you to think outside the box. And I'm sure there's a million and one other buzzwords I can probably throw at that, but it's that. Yeah, they definitely early on in my career, the woman that hired me in publishing at the time, I said to her during the interview process, I said, in 6 months, I want to be an outside sales rep. I said, that's my goal. Because she asked me what my goals were. And she said, that's great. We'll make sure you're on that path. And, it's been very good since then, with obviously lots of bumps in the road. Though.
Was there a moment in that time that you just that switch went on where I'm good at this, I can do this?
It was probably after my first big loss, and
Really?
the first big loss. Yeah. I think it was, we had poured a lot of effort, a lot of money and a lot of time into a very politically charged sale. And it did not go our way. And it's one of those things where I was having a very parallel track happening as well in another account that was very similar to the one we were losing, and we were winning. So we were applying the exact same strategies to both, where it was both very political, very driven by what was going to be the ROI at the end, not only for the end user, but also for, the buyers at the time. And I could see where, it didn't matter what we were going to do in the one we were losing. We were always going to probably end up we weren't the incumbent, and we weren't the incumbent in the one we ended up winning as well. And ultimately, being able to shift and pivot the strategy to the ones that we saw that, okay, this is where the value is going to be for us. Let's shift our efforts there, in a different strategy and learn from what we're not doing right. I think was really where I can say that, it clicked, right? It clicked that, no matter sometimes how hard you work, sometimes you're working even harder for the ones that don't happen, but applying that knowledge forward ultimately actually, ended up being very successful.
That's awesome. What drove your transition into leadership?
I really enjoy the training aspect of what a sales role can, materialize into. I really enjoy seeing those aha moments. It's sad to say I also enjoy the spreadsheet part that tends to come with moving up the ladder as well, and getting down into the nitty gritty and the process of what actually makes the workflows happen. But for me, it's being there to be that mentor, or in some capacity, hoping that I'm acting as a good mentor towards someone to be able to see and guide them in a path that's going to move them in their career. And, being able to instill that trust and that growth and watch that happen for me is really key to, the leadership position. And, obviously the budget meetings come and go, the QBRs come and go, watching that new sales rep or watching that person, that person and individual really have that first real aha moment, or that first good, that great sale, right?
Yep.
And being able to celebrate it from a different avenue with them, and knowing that, you were not 100% involved every step of the way, but you were giving them guidance to grow and get to that point is for me where, I find the most level of enjoyment.
Yeah. Was that a tough path for you to take? Some people are just, I love sales, so you can be torn. Was that a tough decision for you?
I think I've managed to find myself in leadership roles where I've been, whether I've been directly managing people or not. I've been in senior sales leader roles, solutions level roles, where you tend to have to fit that mentorship role because you're not key point of contact, but you become a point of contact for a certain degree of the sale. So I've gotten to experience it on different levels, and now obviously where I am today, managing a team, but I'm also player coach too. So I do have my own accounts that I do manage as part of the process. I think it's an important piece as a leader to still be involved, not necessarily always on the day-to-day aspects of everything going on, but trying to still have that involvement, because it does keep you fresh. It keeps the skills fresh, right? I mean, it's like sales is like anything else. We're only as good as what we're learning and what we continue to hear. Still being able to hear what's happening on the ground floor, and having that empirical data coming back to be able to translate across the team, I think is important.
Yeah. In your role as a sales leader, what are you trying to do to impact the culture of your sales team?
Culture is a very big aspect here at Magic, particularly. So we're an internationally based company. Magic has offices. I'm based out of in the States. We're based out of New York, and then most of our staff and delivery, so we're a professional services company, sits in India. So we've got 99% of our employees are, based in either the central Noida region, NCR region, or now with since COVID, hybridly placed throughout India. So, culturally as a company, we cross a lot of barriers from different languages, obviously being spoken, but we speak English, when we're on calls, for example, or even to the aspect of holidays being celebrated. So, when we're recording this right now, actually, there's holidays going on in India that we would never have heard of. And I just learned about one of them today. It was one of the holidays about how a sister actually celebrates her brother, and vice versa. And it's very interesting to learn and interact with the different cultural aspects of what, we would not necessarily have here stateside. I actually had the opportunity to visit our office very recently with some of our team here in the States. And, we were there for 10 days in the office and experiencing how they interact and how they work together with our production and delivery center. And then also, actually, we did a retreat up into the Himalayas. So we were in the mountains for half of the time as well, hiking together and learning and growing from each other. And I can say a bucket list item I didn't know I needed in my life: visiting India, and obviously going and hiking the Himalayas, and unfortunately getting one day of Delhi belly too. And you can Google Delhi belly after this to see what I mean there.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Do you have a particular strategy or philosophy in how you build your team?
So as a company, we're very hyper focused around accessibility. We're very focused around inclusive and DE&I and inclusive. It's not only in our company, but also in the way we work with our partners, how we present ourselves as a company externally. We have traditionally worked in this space for over 30 years now, where accessibility wasn't anything that was ever talked about. Myself included, 17 years in educational publishing. I whispered the word 508 compliant maybe a handful of times, because it was never something we had to think about or even really present as a case. And thankfully now, with the forefront of that being in the education space, particularly in the K-12 market, of inclusivity, bringing everyone to the table, ensuring that you can see yourself in the material being taught or the material being driven, is so important. Us as a company, for example, so, we have become an accessibility vendor of choice for many of our partners, where, we will go through basic review of a website, for example, to show if it's compliant for accessibility. We'll remediate the product and deliver, hopefully, a higher level version of accessibility when it's done. So that's a lot of times how we would start engaging, and then it transitions into also us working in different levels of engineering work, platform development work. So it really gives us our own foothold as a company. But even just to think about in a hiring process as well, are we hiring people that are not always 100% like-minded? The groupthink is good, but groupthink can also become very detrimental to growth.
That's, I think, the first time this has come up on Sales Lead Dog. I'm really glad you brought this up. I really believe that, you have to, if you're going to connect with a particular market or segment, you have to be able to connect in all ways, not just in, your marketing lingo or your pitch or whatever, but as you said, you have to represent, and so that's a huge commitment. Was this something that happened? It took a while to transform, or can you talk a little bit about that transformation or that path?
I think it's been very organic in the industry in and of itself. I know myself, it's not something that I can look back and say it's something I invented, but I think even like for example, on my own level, when I'm trying to conduct an interview or an interview process, I do my best, try not to bring the unconscious bias in. I mean, obviously it happens, right? Even for example, my first interview, I try to just do over the phone. I'd rather not have that face-to-face first, because we form unconscious bias when we see that the impression, and I do my best to avoid that. It doesn't, it doesn't always happen, but because then you have this ability to kind of think differently than what you may see presented the first time forward, or even as you're starting to go through, and someone may check all of the boxes professionally. Yep. All down the way. They could be a rock star. They could have that superstar, been top dog every time, or top, number one in their company. But if they're not going to be a good team player, so if you have an existing team, right, the last thing you want to do is have an individual contributor coming in that can't get along with the other individual contributors, because ultimately you still have to bring people together. So there's a lot of that you have to think about that goes beyond just an accessibility or even inclusivity in the process as well. But being able to then also represent forward, if people like to talk the talk, understand that you understand what they're saying. And it's so important today. I know we're not just checking boxes.
Right. In your role as a sales leader, and you touched a little bit on this earlier, failure is such a big component of sales. We wish we could win them all. Mm-hmm. How do you leverage your experiences on the front lines with failure in your role as a sales leader today?
So we have a process internally where, we will always look at, the unfortunate ones that did not come across the finish line for us in the way we would like. We have a root cause analysis review of taking the time to pull together the teammates that were involved. We also try to bring potentially people that would have an outside opinion that may not have been involved in, the actual process as it went, to really try to identify and understand, okay, let's see where we may have been able to pivot differently in the future. Did we hear the feedback? Did we gather the requirements properly? Did we implement a strategy properly to ultimately come out and win? And, that's important to be able to say, because, we want to be able to learn from that mistake and not keep creating the same challenges and issues each time of having to have those analysis afterwards. Again, everybody would love to win everyone, but we know the unfortunateness of sales. It's the more leads we have, the bigger the pipeline, great, but are we bringing them all to fruition is important too.
Yeah. Is it hard for you to get that feedback from your prospects that on the ones you lose? Do you get good info from them as to why you lost or why they went with the other company?
I think it's going to depend upon your interaction with them prior. I think if it's a cold RFP you're coming into, you're going to get less feedback because you haven't taken the time to nurture the relationship, and the relationship's not there. You're answering blindly, basically. So it's important to structure your time with them prior. Try to get as much as you can off the record, potentially as well. That's not the unstated questions in the RFP that aren't there, as well as making sure you've got the relationship going into it that you can try to show some of the cards beforehand and get that gauge ahead of time. Maybe it's a pricing question, or maybe it's a direction question that they may not be thinking about, and try to gauge that interest prior to seeing if you may be, taking it that separate direction of what they were thinking, because that can be very risky at times as well, because you might not be wearing the blinders that they're asking you to wear, but getting them to think differently. And then obviously the most important one is helping them write the RFP in the first place, or helping them write the outcome in the first place, because you've been embedded prior to it having to go to a session to prove the investment that's coming.
What role does empathy play in your role as a sales leader?
It's very important. I think, the emotional quotient has been a very high topic of everyone now, especially in leadership positions, with how the world has changed, how we work, how we interact. Particularly obviously in the past, prior to COVID, we might have been doing this in the same room together. Right. This shift away from having traditional office space. Most of my career, I've been an at-home or an outside sales-based employee. I've had the interactions in the office as well. So being able to transition that thought process and understand, how do you work with somebody and get beyond just the professional piece, understand, hey, there's a lot going on in life right now. We live in a very interesting time, to say the least. I think, as a world, we're learning to accept some of the things that, have changed how we work, particularly in the education space. Many of the things I was talking about for 15 years of my career about moving to digital literally happened overnight when students were put virtual. And honestly, that's what brought me back in education. I had left. I was in, an industry where I was working with integration software for a while, and then got to see what was happening with my young one here, who was in second grade at the time. And I'm like, nothing's changed in this industry in 10 years for some aspects of this. How do I pivot back into that? And ended up, thankfully, finding, the role here at Magic and working with the team to come on board. But, empathy is very important, because, you, as a leader, you are, sometimes leader, sometimes boss, sometimes therapist, sometimes friend, sometimes drinking buddy, right? When we're winning or sadly losing. But, so trying to fit that mold of, being able to understand that there's more going on outside of, this screen here or the client walls is important.
Do you have certain characteristics you're looking for in the candidates you're planning on developing for a leadership role?
I like someone that's got a good sense of humor. I think it's a good quality to have in sales. I really enjoy someone that's going to be authentic and be themselves right away. I believe in the cards on the table approach to a lot of this. It doesn't always necessarily pan out in a lot of cases, but I also do think that you can learn a lot about somebody within those first 15 minutes if they're being authentic or not too, because that's going to translate forward into how they work when they're independent. It's going to translate forward in how they become and hopefully integrate into part of the existing culture and team without too much disruption, right? And, important to just being able to understand that, will they challenge the system that may not be right internally and externally as well? So being able to have an opinion that, but also can accept that you can't change everything overnight.
Right. What was your biggest mistake early on in when you transformed into leadership?
Just one. It's a learning process every day, I think. It was interesting how I transitioned into beyond just a straight mentor role. I had, moved into a consulting role for a bit and trying to decide what I wanted to do with the rest of my life for a couple of years ago, and actually ended up in the corporate L&D space and had the opportunity to build a sales and marketing team for a company that provides call center operations around the world. So that was my first real dive into it. Great leader that took a chance in me, a company that took a chance in me, and the same that I was taking a chance in them as well, leaving behind traditional education, moving into the corporate space. And, it was, for me, the interesting challenge was, I had typically worked for companies that were US or British based. They were a French based company. And so there was culture shock again, obviously. So that's always big and tough, being a new leader coming into a company. And then, how do we navigate those waters? How do you build a team around that culture? And then also, the shift was away from thinking about always selling for an outcome of who's going to use my product to then in the corporate L&D space, where it was driven by what's going to be my ROI. Great, your product's awesome, your conversation was great. Now you got to go prove an ROI for the next 6 months. And that was an interesting learning experience for myself, as well as the people that we were bringing on. They were young. Many of them were first or second sales job in their career. It wasn't traditional sales. It was more of a solutions role. So navigating and learning with them alongside of them, I think was a lot of mistakes were always made. Of course, their mistakes are always going to be made every day. I think just, if you're not making mistakes, you're not doing it right, I feel.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I believe that. You have to fall on your face. It is absolutely the best way to learn.
Yeah.
I get nervous when things are always going well all the time. I get very, very nervous. Like, what am I not doing that I should be doing?
Yeah. What email did I not read today, or text did I not see? Because there's got to be something, right? It was too quiet today.
Yeah, that voice in my head's going, "You're not doing something. It's going too good. You're not pushing hard enough somewhere." So let's switch the conversation a little bit. CRM, do you love it or do you hate it?
So In my time when I was outside of the L&D space on both sides of it, I was actually involved in some aspect of the CRM world. So I was the integration software I was working with actually typically was integrating either CRM to ERP or some version of that, being that middleware working with those systems. So I got to know a lot about CRM on the dirty side of it, working with, how they work. Being in sales, obviously, we can live and die by our CRMs as well. So I've gotten to know many of them very well. They're better than others. I think the best CRMs in the world are the ones that you can get to your information quickly with as little steps as possible. There's always going to be room for improvement. There's always going to be, I wish it did this, which is where companies like yourself come into play, I would assume, right? Yeah. And then, being able to just think through, what is my workflow improving because I'm using my CRM or not? Or is the information there when, I unfortunately get the hangnail and I'm out for 6 months, can somebody go and decipher my notes of what I was working on and pick up where I left off?
Yeah. Is CRM usually the problem, or is it an excuse for what the real problem is?
In my opinion, it's about a training. It's always about the training. The data is only as good as the person inputting it. At the end of the day, it's just a giant database responding back with the information that was in it. So if the end user is not religious with the work to do it, it's always going to be just, well, it was another tool that I didn't use today. I say it was about 10 years ago in my career where I actually made the transition away from paper notes as best as I could to making sure I was using the CRM. And thankfully, at this point, I'm very good about it, of trying to do my best to take my notes while they're happening in the CRM with the window open and another screen. That way they're fresh, they're there. I didn't have to worry, did I write it down and then did I translate it appropriately, or more importantly, did I get too distracted and not translate them in? So I found for me, my own workflow, I use my CRM every day. It's open, it's there, my notes are there. I harp on my team for it. If any of them were here with me, they would know that I'm asking them, did they put their note, did they track their meetings? And internally as a company, we do use our CRM to report back on the progress of the account. Are we working enough at this account? Did we have enough quality meetings? Are there areas where we can improve our meeting outreach with the different teams internally that are tasked with working on the accounts as well? So it's always a work in progress when it comes to a salesperson, because again, we always have that, let's get to the next one. But, being able to have that religious mentality of, okay, my notes are there, I'm tracking it, or my opportunity is up to date, I'm tracking the opportunity, I'm tagging the people that I know need to help me on this opportunity. Again, another important piece of that accountability, right? It can't just be me being accountable, but I know I need these 4 people to help me. Let me make sure they know what's going on.
Yep. How do you leverage CRM in your analysis, that root cause analysis around the lost deals?
It's an area where I say we can improve. So we actually have, right now, we have 2 internal systems that we're using. One specifically just for, our prospecting, our note taking on the account, and currently our opportunities live in another system. We are transitioning to where they will all be gathered in one place. But so there is a little bit of a disconnect when it comes to that for us. As far as tying the 2 together, though, we do track both. Can we look back at the notes, or can we look and see, how long was this lead open, for example, right? That's always the hard part as a sales leader. Let's say, this lead was open for 90 days. Were we working it appropriately? Would we put the right effort into it? Maybe that's one of the reasons why we ended up on the wrong side of this lead, or did we have the right inputs early enough on to understand that we may have needed more help in the front end? And then we can go back, and we do go back and look at that as well.
Right. I love that. Do you guys have a strategy around how you're leveraging technology to enable the sales team?
So it's kind of interesting being a company that also has its own technology vertical internally. So, beyond just working on the content side, we do have full platform development internally as well. So, we do work and build systems like this externally for clients. So we do transition that knowledge internally. We actually just recently launched our employee portal for training internally. We have a SaaS-based program that we also sell externally as well. That has LMS-like features and different features that can be implemented white labeled as well. So it's kind of interesting having some of these things internally that are our own. We obviously do work third party for many of the systems as well. So kind of integrating in different systems that have different functions for each one of the, so not one system having to be a catch-all, for example, but individual systems using for their expert.
That's wild.
Pieces that
That's good stuff. What about integrating marketing technology with the sales technology and also using that to help create alignment between marketing and sales? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Account-based marketing is huge. I think, having the tools to be able to be integrated in and understand the hit rate, the click rate, digging into what the SEO is, for example, on the website, collating all of that data. I mean, we've got so much data that comes at us now as a salesperson, and trying to understand, did Chris got the newsletter. Okay, Chris opened it twice. Oh, he clicked on this link once. Great. Let me go pounce on Chris. Right. And then all of a sudden you're getting all of these what look from are obviously cold call messages in your view coming through, cold calls, but we've got all that data on you because if it's GDPR is not involved, we've seen your click rate, we've seen the pattern rate, or you clicked on that ad that was in LinkedIn that we targeted you with because of where you are, and you landed on that landing page, and now we've gathered all that information. So it's that scary factor of data as well of what's being tracked. But how do we translate that then into actionable items, right? The actionable items of, okay, well, that's something maybe as a talking point the next time you and I talk, right? As opposed to having to just pounce on you. So being able to use the data in appropriate ways. Did we establish a relationship prior? Hey, I saw you open that link, Chris, I shoot you the message. What'd you think?
Right.
Or if you're somebody I don't know, that's probably not the most appropriate message because it'll probably land in the spam. And then next thing, 6 touch points before somebody responds if they don't know you, I think is the current average, or at least the average pre-COVID. I'm sure that's probably higher now. But
yeah,
it's such an interesting rabbit hole you can go down with data.
Oh, it really is. And it's, you said it. I mean, it is just a deluge of data these days, what you can collect. Like you said, if you're not GDPR, there's just so much. And then it's figuring out, okay, how do I leverage this to actually come up with those, engagement strategy? How are we going to leverage this information to make that appropriate outreach to where you're not being creepy or, scaring people,
then you have your account-based people I want to do this way. Then you have your vertical-based people I want to do this. Oh, we have this campaign strategy we're about to launch. It's the overwhelmingness of everything that a salesperson has to deal with. And we got tough jobs.
Oh yeah.
Nobody wants to believe it. Everybody wants
it's
to
so true,
fingers, right?
Yeah, I was talking to a friend of mine who's career sales guys, and he's like, "Oh, the people in the office, they get so mad at me. They think like I'm just." Because I'll come in the office for a couple hours, then I'm gone, and they think like I'm out, like going home taking a nap or I'm golfing or whatever. They have no idea how much work I'm putting into this and how hard my job is. And when you factor in just like you're saying, the volume of data and all these different things that you have to worry about, it is a hard job.
Yeah. Nobody knows what we go through, right? Except,
everyone listening to this, they know.
Guys would be telling us, the sales guys don't do anything, right?
Yeah, that's right. They just collect the big paychecks.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's awesome. Dan, really appreciate you coming on Sales Lead Dog. If people want to reach out and connect with you, or if they want to learn more about Magic EdTech, what's the best way for them to do that?
Absolutely. Yeah. So our website is magicedtech.com. That is the corporate website. They can find us on all the social channels as well. LinkedIn, Twitter. I think we're on Instagram, Facebook. You can find myself as well. I'm on LinkedIn. Just search for Dan Gizzi. I'm on Twitter, not as active, but more active on LinkedIn. And then really would love to obviously engage in any way with the network as possible. And love being here, Chris. Thanks for inviting me, and look forward to having future conversations with you as well.
Yeah, no, it's great having you on here on Sales Lead Dog. And Dan, welcome to the pack.
Thank you.
As we end this discussion on Sales Lead Dog, be sure to subscribe to catch all our episodes. On social media, follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. Watch the videos on YouTube, and you can also find our episodes on our website at impellercrm.com/Sales Lead Dog. Sales Lead Dog is supported by Impeller CRM, delivering objectively better CRM for business, guaranteed.